Hello, my name is Alessia, and welcome to the Coffee Breakup.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen.
What's up, everybody?
Yes, another episode of the Coffee Breakup. Yes, we got my boy Marv.
What's up? And Christian.
And we have our guest Alessia.
Hello.
Yes. Also, for those of you who have inquired, we also have our photographer on deck, making sure everything works out smoothly. So every now and then you'll see me look over. You will probably even see Marvin look over. There's communication. He's part of the production. All right, guys. So
Producer over here.
Yeah.
Producer.
Okay, yeah, we'll use that lightly.
Well, thanks for tuning in anyways.
Thanks for tuning in. For those of you who are watching on YouTube,
make sure you subscribe, you like, you share.
smash that like button.
And
Ring that
comment.
notification bell.
You do, and comment, and share with your friends.
All that good stuff. You can listen to us on Spotify, iTunes.
And check out our website, thecoffeebreakup.com. Get some merchandise, some information, the whole 9 yards.
Check us out on social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok.
We're there now as well.
Yes.
That being said, special episode. We got somebody very interesting on with us.
Highly referred.
And
One of our close friends, Miss Alessia. Please start off, introduce yourself, a little bit of background about who you are, your upbringing, and what got you over here.
Yes, okay. So my name is Alessia. I am originally from a small hick town in Ohio. Small town, nothing to do. So I ended up in Miami because I wanted to do something with my life and was bored.
Oh, cool.
Actually, I moved here for the weather.
And Miami. Oh, okay. Yeah. I was like, Miami is not I wouldn't say it's a place, but the weather is nice.
The weather. It's cold where I come from, so I jumped in my car.
It's hot where we're from.
Yeah, so you wanted some change in scenery.
Change in scenery.
Quite
and
the extreme.
Yeah,
it wasn't
literally.
extreme. It was a shock when I got here, let's say that. So graduated undergrad, and then I got into grad school down here. So I drove 18 hours in my car, ended up in Miami, Florida. And so here I am. But long story short, I studied clinical psychology at Barry University. Took a lot of classes. My thesis, I did a lot of research on cultural motivation for cultural identity, motivation for fitness, health, all of that.
How come you chose that?
Because when we were doing the research, they said to pick a topic. You have to do a thesis in grad school.
Yeah.
So they said pick a topic of something you're interested in, and I played sports my whole life.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So I was like,
that's the background.
I'm like, I don't know what to research, so I pick something you love. So I was like, what can I do? Sports related, fitness related. I like healthy food, all that stuff. So I'm like, you can make a niche with anything in psychology. So I was just let's do different cultures and their motivation to exercise. And down here, there's a diverse group of people to figure out to do a research study on. So I studied that, but then going with that, I found all the why we do what we do, why we're motivated to do what we do, or why we're behaving the way we are behaving. So I found that very interesting. Worked at a rehab down here in North Miami. Was exhausted. I did that at my internship. So then I questioned everything. I was like, is this what I want to do with my life?
How come? Like, what created that? Like,
Doubt almost.
Yeah, like that wake up, like, because I mean, why did you, when you went to grad school? How come you chose? Why did you choose to go to grad school? Did you know what you wanted to do?
No, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew in my undergrad I have a psychology degree. I have a bachelor's, and if you want to actually make money in that field, you have to continue in education.
Yeah.
Sure.
I wasn't aware enough to say, I 100% know I need to go to grad school because I know what I want to do with my life. It was kind of like, hey, keep going to school because you don't know what you want to do, which I'm going to tell people don't do that because a lot of people go to school and then they have these degrees and they don't know what they want to do.
Yeah.
So
Or they do nothing even related
Of
to
course.
it.
In that field.
Of course. And you don't need an education,
Hey, why you looking at me
my
like that?
perspective.
Why are you looking at me like that?
No particular reason. Carry on.
Shots already?
No.
Anyways.
No, but I do not think you need a degree to be successful at all. But I just kept going to school. I knew school and I'm good at school. So I just was like, let me go to school, get a grad school degree. And then I'll figure out what I want to do with that degree, I guess. So I just stayed in school. So then I had a freak out moment when I was about to graduate grad school. I was like, should I keep going to school?
Get a PhD?
Yeah.
Should I? Yeah, I almost did. I applied.
wow.
I applied
No
too,
way.
and I was like, but then what am I going to do with it? The same thing I'm going to do with the grad degree, but take out more loans, be in more debt.
Right.
And my passion wasn't there. I was scared, right? I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I graduated, went through a breakup.
Hey.
There we go. And I was like, I don't want to be down here. You're probably the only reason I'm staying here at the time.
Sure.
So he tried me. I was like, I'm going to go back to Ohio. I had to bartend that night too when I actually went back to Ohio. I had to bartend. I've never quit a job in my life. I was bartending. I called my managers. I called everybody and I was like, I'm not coming in tonight. I'm not coming in tomorrow. I don't know if we'll ever be back. And
Oh my God.
And I just started driving to Ohio 18 hours after this breakup because my boyfriend at the time was like, I was like, I'm going to go to Ohio. If we're not going to break up, there's no point in me being here. He's like, okay, go ahead.
You won't.
Oh, I won't? Oh, okay.
Like,
Halfway through my drive to Ohio, he's like, hey, you want to go out tonight? I'm like, I'm halfway home. You know where to find me in Ohio. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So went to Ohio.
Awesome.
Yeah. I was like, well, there's no reason to stay
Right,
here.
right,
And you
right.
don't try me like I'm not going to leave. You
Yeah.
told me to leave. I did what you said. You can't be upset about it.
Fair enough.
Right?
Right.
So anyway, ended up back in Ohio. Didn't know what I wanted to do. Started researching what I researched in grad school. And so I typed in psychology and fitness. So an article came up that said when psychology meets the gym. And I was fresh out of school, wanted to start my own practice because I've always thought about it, but I thought I'm too young. I'm too young to do that. That was my mindset. I'm too young. I need the experience. So I applied to all these 9-to-5 jobs. I wanted to be in Florida. I just didn't know where. I just wanted to be back in the warmth. So I got job offers at rehabs and eating disorder clinics in Sarasota, Tampa, all those areas. But I was there for 6 weeks in Ohio, and I found the article that said psychology meets the gym. And there was a lady in Orlando. Her name is Sandy Canfield, and she is amazing.
Shout out.
Yeah, she's amazing. And she is in my life for a reason because she has helped me in so many ways, in business-wise, but also in becoming who I have become today. Randomly calls me. I called her. I left her this great message, email, thinking these people are never going to call me back. She had a private practice for psychology and mental health, and one of her business partners owned a boutique gym, and they would work with bariatrics and plus-size fitness. And so they would go to therapy about why they're emotionally eating. Mm-hmm. So addiction, it's everything.
Yeah,
we're all escaping through things, right? So she was like, I mean, if you want to move here and start a practice, I'll help you. I'm like, really? She called me back on a Sunday. I was having family dinner.
This is you not knowing, like no connection or nothing.
I didn't even know her. I literally
whim.
sent an email of like my life story. Like,
Right,
this is what I
for the best.
Yeah, I'm like, whatever. I mean,
beautiful.
I'm already up here bored as shit in Ohio, you know? So I sent her this, never thinking I was going to get a response back. And she called me like, hey, like she acted like she knew me forever. I'm like,
That's
is
cool.
this supposed to be professional or thinking like this lady has her practice? Is she trying to offer me a job? Is she trying to help me? Sunday, she's like, yeah, I mean, why don't you come down and meet me? I'm like, is this lady serious? She goes, yeah, I do this. I do the same type of therapy, but I treat addiction, but I also treat anxiety, depression, everything. And people just working on themselves. So I'm like, all right. She's like, I treat everything the same. If you want to come learn more, if you want to start a practice, I'll supervise you because you need supervised for hours.
Sure.
So I need to find a supervisor anyway. I'm like, why not? So I jump on a flight, fly down, meet her, fly back up. Then I jump in my car because I was like, this is going to work. Let's do it. Like, this is scary. Drove back down to Orlando and just rented out a room and started from no clients to now 4 years later. I have a full practice. Love what I do. I'm trained and I deal with everything. I help people with just overall self-awareness. I'm trained to treat addiction, health. I do couples, everything when it comes to just psychology and therapeutic realms.
Do you have like, not a niche, but do you have something that you like really enjoy sitting down with, like a certain, if it's relationships, if it's addiction, is there something that you have like
Or is it still exercise,
or something that you
body
prefer?
image?
Initially, it was all, I moved there because I'm like, oh, motivation for exercise. That's what I wanted. I'm like, oh, I want to deal with obesity and like, why are people overeating? I don't know if you guys have ever watched My 600-Pound Life.
I think I have.
I've heard of it.
It's
a
like
show.
with
It's a show.
very heavily obese
Yes,
people.
okay.
And like, if people like are overeating, it's the same as you're doing too many drugs, you're drinking too much. There's always
Except food is the drug.
escapism.
Right,
It's comfort, right? And so we all do it in moderation. We have to eat, right? So occasionally we're like, I want to eat crap food. That's fine, right? But if you do it all day, every day, all you're focused on is eating, that's bad,
problem.
Yeah.
right? Same with anything, drugs, alcohol, everything in moderation is okay. If you're doing too much of something, what's going on? So I initially only at first thought I wanted to work with, no, I'm just going to move there and work with plus size fitness too, because that's my realm.
Yeah.
But then in growing my practice, I was like, I can't just really specialize in that if I'm trying to get clients, right?
Right.
So then I started realizing through working with older therapists and this going through emotional based therapy trainings that, oh, we all have stuff and we're all driven through emotions.
Like it's deeper than just what you were originally.
Right. Initially, I was just like, oh, yeah, I want to help. And this is the niche. And I wonder how. But I'm like, no, if you get to people's emotions, you can treat anything. It doesn't matter what you're coming in for. If somebody walks my office, I'm that confident to say, I know how to help you. Because I just have to get you to follow your soul and figure out what's the emotion that you're not dealing with or you're dealing with. And to help heal that. So you're not either escaping it and you're learning how to deal with it.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, because a lot of us, I can't say a lot of us, but I would assume that people, they're just comfortable with some sort, with what they've always known and what they've always done, and a belief that they've had. Maybe they've instilled it in themselves, or maybe, through parents or through their environment, through friends. So then you kind of just believe something, and then if something challenges that, you get uncomfortable.
Of course.
So why are we getting uncomfortable? So I guess you try to find that root.
Of course. And all of us, because we all have strategies in your brain because of childhood, families, and experiences and memories. Your body has memory. You have to remember that. So if you go through, if you are in a relationship and you're with the next person and something happens that reminds you of the old relationship, what's your body do? Be careful.
It triggers like a warning, almost like, when
I think the body acknowledges a pattern.
Right.
The body
recognizes,
of course, and you're scared of that emotion because you remember how it hurt, right?
Yeah. It's like you see the pattern, you think the result can be the same because.
So then your voices are in your head like, hey, remember what happened last time? Don't trust him. Because the last guy that you trusted, you got hurt. And then your body's like, you don't want to feel that pain again. Instead of saying, yeah, this might hurt and I'm willing to accept the pain because it might happen again, but it might not. But this is a new guy, so I'm going to be open-minded. But your voices are still like, well, remember last time? Because remember that feeling? We don't. Instead, you have to be like, hey, love is pain. So I might get hurt. I might not, but I have to. That's vulnerability.
It's almost like that survival instinct where it's like, man, like I'm used to, like this happened. Like my body's programmed to, I got burned, and then now I see fire, and it's like, oh, let me back away and let me not even engage with that because this happened X amount of time. Yeah,
of course.
So I think that's how we're programmed, survival instinct, but also we have to be smart enough to say, hey, this happened, but just because it happened last time doesn't mean it's gonna happen this time with somebody else.
Such a crappy way to think too. Like how deep trauma can be.
Sure.
Because of one experience that you had, it can change how you approach everything.
Yeah.
For sure.
Like an incident that happened when you were a kid can affect you for the rest of your life. If
Likewise.
you're not really
Unless you can identify
and then
And a lot of us can't. Why? Because it becomes our norm, right?
Right.
So when it's your norm, it's comfortable. So you see people that are like, okay, like I'm disorganized because I grew up in a family where we're disorganized. Does that mean you really like it, or you like it because it's your norm and that's all you know?
Yeah.
So your body's like, now I'm uncomfortable in the calm, but how do I get to normalize that in my body, right?
Yeah.
It's like you have to practice it. You have to get that feeling met. What would that feel like? If to learn to grow up in a calming state. If it's foreign to you, you're gonna usually not want it.
Yeah, ignore it. Yeah. Why? Like this, if this is all I've known and it's worked for me, why?
But it's not working. When we become adults, our strategies aren't working.
I know.
So that's the thing I teach too. It's like, well, yeah, of course, I want to figure out my problems alone. I'm used to doing everything alone. And I always say, how's that working for you? I know that strategy. How is it working for you?
Well, they can say it's worked thus far, but in hindsight, if you really identify, it's like, has it really?
It's worked this far, but you are still wanting help, right? You might have a strategy. I don't need anybody. I don't need anybody because I made it this far. It's like, it's like this omnipotence and this aggression of like, I don't need anybody. But at the end of the day, when you're crying and you're alone in your house, like, I wish I had help. But you're not allowing people to help you because you're like, don't worry, I don't need your help. Yeah. Because you're not even allowing it. Instead of saying, I don't like asking for help, but let me challenge myself to be like, this hurts my ego a little, but I do want help today.
Right.
And are you willing to help me? But it's like, don't ask for help. You don't.
It's so crazy how like the same like mind kind of has its own argument against itself.
Of course, you're fighting your voices all day.
Yeah, it's so crazy. When you think about it, yo.
It's creepy.
That's super creepy.
You're fighting, and people don't realize, like, when I ask clients when they first come in about relationships or what they're going through, why'd she make you mad? I don't know. She just makes me mad. You know why she makes you mad. You just haven't sat and thought about what happened that actually caused that emotion, right? a lot of people, as soon as I see them, I have to teach them. I'm like, I'll let them say I don't know a first few sessions, because a lot of people are uncomfortable in the silence of, let me sit here with myself and figure it out. That's what getting the help is.
Right. But I feel like a lot of people just they don't know how to sit with themselves and be like, okay, this is what happened. Let me dissect and step back and see what went wrong and why am I feeling the way I'm feeling.
Or they're so comfortable with the thought of, well, she makes me mad, that why even try to think differently, because she just makes me mad.
Because there's a voice that's like, oh, nothing's going to change anyway. Right?
Yeah.
So why do I have to tell her? She should know what's wrong.
Or not only that, it's also like uncomfortable to think that, oh, well, maybe it's not her, because all I know is that she makes me mad. All I know is that she's been making me mad this whole time. But why? Oh, I don't want to, like, now I have to change the way I think.
Of course. So. And I have to be curious. And people don't realize, like, that's, even being curious about yourself, it's exhausting, right? It's worth it. But like the first things you go through, figuring out yourself, like, who am I? Like, what are my thoughts? What are my feelings? It's exhausting. I call it minor surgery when people leave. I'm like, you had minor surgery today. Go home and take a nap. Because you're sitting there like, why? But then when you ask yourself why, you have to feel. Right? That's why people aren't. It's easier to say she makes me mad than to sit here and be like, every time she does it, I'm sad about it.
Yeah. Like, and then you understand the why.
Right? Remember at the beginning we were talking and something happened and I said, what are you feeling? And I said, label the emotion.
Annoyed.
And you have to actually think about it.
Because then you're like, what am I feeling? I'm annoyed. And now it's like, damn, now I actually feel annoyed. Then you're feeling it, but it's good for your body to say, it's okay to feel it.
Acknowledgement.
Yeah.
And it causes emotional regulation, which a lot of us want to be like, no, I don't want to worry about it because I don't have to deal with it, which is hold you in anger, resentment, or just I'm going to act like I'm happy, but I'm actually just not dealing with the stuff that's making me feel negative.
Yeah, it's awareness.
Yeah, pretending like, okay, I'd rather not deal with the emotion. But
of course.
But then you'll never know what the emotion is. So that's awareness of identifying what it actually is. I mean, like, oh, so this is what being annoyed is.
Of course.
I think ultimately we're just so used to dealing with the symptoms, right? Rather than the actual, with the cause of it, right? Oh, I'm upset, or she's making me jealous, or I'm insecure. Well, that's the reaction, but where is this coming from?
Exactly.
And a lot of us just don't even sit there with ourselves or with the other person and like dissect in and kind of figure out, hey, what is going on?
Of course. If you get to the emotion of anything, that's where you can actually, in couples too. Couples is the big thing. What is happening on the other side that you're not aware of? They're not aware of. They're not telling you. It's not just about, oh, I'm mad because they ordered Dairy Queen and I wanted something else. It's like, well, when they chose that and didn't consider you or something.
Yeah, you felt left out or maybe.
It's like, why didn't you ask me? That's what always, he never asks me what I want. He just goes and gets what he wants and assumes that it's what I want. How does that feel? I feel like I'm left out all the time. I feel like he doesn't include me as part of the relationship, right? And then he's like, "Oh, damn! I thought we were fighting about Dairy Queen the whole time, right?"
right.
I've seen that in a session. They're like, "You're never gonna guess what we fought about." And I'm like, "What?" They're like, and my clients that have seen me for a while, couples come in, they're like, "We fought about the yard work, We fought about Dairy Queen." I'm like, "You didn't fight about Dairy Queen.
Yeah.
You think you fought about Dairy Queen, but it's like the emotions that you guys aren't saying. This is the reality of what the patterns we get into every time."
So when you sit with these clients, and we'll use the same example, how do you because when they're in their relationship on their day to day, that never gets identified or that conversation never arises. How do you then get to that point for them to say to get to that point?
To get to what point exactly?
Like for them to finally, like, it's not just that we're fighting about Dairy Queen. It's I feel left out in that case. Like, how do you get from we always fight about Dairy Queen to it's because I'm left out? How do you have the conversation, have them get to that?
It takes time, and you have to go slow. And you know what? Individual clients and couples, the biggest thing I had to learn doing what I do, the slower you go, the more uncomfortable people feel, right? Because then you're forced to feel. And then I'm going to let's go slow. Let's dissect this. Dairy Queen. Let's lay out Dairy Queen. What is it representing?
So it's like you're kind of creating like a network.
I basically am going to take you through this.
You walk them through.
I'm going to walk you through. Let's start with Dairy Queen. Yeah. And then next, they're going to start arguing about something else. It's like, well, remember that one time too? And I'm like, oh, here we go.
At the supermarket when you pick this instead of this.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, so now it's like every time, then I'm going to help them realize the patterns of what's the dance.
Like that, the demon dance.
But that should also be kind of healthy, because at least now they're all letting it all out. Wouldn't you
100%, because there is such a difference between, hey, you don't ever include me and you went and picked up Dairy Queen, I'm pissed at you, versus once a client's in there and says, I'm like, hey, let's act like your man's not in here. I do that in sessions all the time. If it was just me and you and your significant other actually wasn't, let's pretend he's not in the room. What are you actually upset about? And usually it's like, no, actually he does this all the time. And what's the feeling you have when he does it? I feel sad. I feel alone. I feel alone every time he doesn't include me. And then the husband's like, you feel alone?
Yeah.
You feel alone? And then it's like that empathy comes in of like, I don't want my woman to feel, if I knew you felt alone, in my head, it's Dairy Queen.
Right. They don't even think about what they're doing or they
like
think the severity of it. Maybe even.
Of course.
For them, it's Dairy Queen. But it's deeper than that,
Of
right?
course.
But
Yeah, or the supermarket, like I said, it probably all stems from the same place.
Right, same feeling.
And getting to that feeling is when you're like, oh, well, these are all related, which if we solve this problem,
of course.
there is no
I do it
Queen.
myself, and I always tell my clients to do it. What's the main emotion you go to in a fight with your significant other? That's what I try to help couples dissect. Try to pinpoint your dance. And that stings because you have to realize, what am I feeling when I'm in the fight with my significant other?
What do you mean? What do you mean by dance?
So there's a relationship dance. I usually draw it out for people, but it's like the infinity symbol.
I like created like on the screen.
Yeah, it's
I'll
like
try.
it's like the infinity symbol. So I would say there's a dance. So it's like couples get in a fight, right? It's like, oh, you pissed me off, or we're in a fight, and it's like, now I'm mad, and I'm like, I don't even want to talk about it. This isn't even worth my time, and I leave. There's usually one person that's more avoidant and one person that's more anxious. That's usually what happens. So one person's usually the one that's like, peace. I am not going to deal with this today because we're going to end up in the same stupid fight. I'm leaving. And what's the anxious person usually like? Oh, you're going to come back and talk to me? Are you going to come back? Like, I'm anxious because I want to fix a relationship. I don't know how. I just want it to be better. Like, come on, let's talk about it. Are you really going to walk out on me? And then the other person's like, oh, no, I'm not. I don't have time for this, and leaves. So then what usually happens is, because we don't know how to have the deep conversation of what are we actually fighting about, the avoidant person comes back, and then the anxious person's like, voice, don't bring it up because he seems okay now. Let's just okay, now we're fine because the emotions are like calming down. So now it's like, all right, you come back in the house and we just fought 5 hours ago, but now that you're back, I feel like, all right, he's home. I feel better. I'm already calmer, and my emotions that were heightened 5 hours ago are calm now. So now I'm not even gonna bring it up. It's not even worth bringing it up again. And then boom, what happens? The actual what we fought about is never addressed. So it's like, all right, cool. Babe, okay, whatever. Hey, what do you want to watch? What do you want to watch on TV? What do you want to have for dinner? And it's like, we're gonna probably forget about what we fought about yesterday. Yeah, and so and it's like, all right, fine, forget.
It's not a big deal anymore.
It's not a big deal anymore. It's not a big. And a lot of it, you think, well, it was something stupid. We fought about Dairy Queen, and then what happens? That means the dance just happened and nothing was acknowledged in the dance. So then, guess what? The next fight happens. You probably feel whatever feeling you're not addressing. It's probably the same feeling. You're just not aware of it. Mm-hmm. And then, boom, that fight happens. Same shit. Oh, I'm going to go out. Here we go again. I'm leaving. I'm anxious. You're in that dance of that fight, that uncomfortable feeling. And then it's like, we don't want to be uncomfortable. So, well, let's just act like it didn't happen. Instead of, hey, every time you're in that dance, let's realize and say, this is it. We're in that dance. And guess what I feel? I feel alone. And if they can acknowledge the feeling that they're having in the dance, there's a similar feeling, and everybody's wounded differently. So what one person feels, the other person's like, oh, you feel alone and I feel unheard, whatever.
Do you think that that's it's like a balance between boundaries, or do people just avoid doing it altogether? Because maybe someone does want to, and maybe, like, let's say we get into an argument. Mm-hmm. Maybe he'll be like, oh, I don't want to talk about it right now. But I'm like, well, I want to talk about it right now. And that could be a little bit challenging. Or do you just find people that are just like, oh, let's just not deal with it at all?
Both. I think people are scared, voices in your head. Now I don't want to talk about it because I don't want him to get mad at me. Mm-hmm. And then I don't want him to leave me, or I don't want to start another fight. Or the boundaries, which this is a hard one. I see it a lot, which is when we're in a fight, I want to fix it now. Mm. When we're in a fight, I can't fix it now because I'm so mad at you. Well, we're just going to keep fighting. So what's the point? I can't talk to you when I'm so mad at you. Yeah. And the other person's like, well, come on, we got to figure out right now, because that person's anxious and wants to figure it out. But that gets you nowhere. So where's the compromise? When we realize we're in the dance, maybe, like I've said, one of my clients, this was their thing and it works for them now. She used to say, she used to avoid, and he used to be a very anxious guy. So he's like, every time we get in a fight, she wants to go to the room. She won't talk to me for 2 days. She's like, I'm still pissed at you. I'm still mad. And he's like, he's thinking like so anxious. Like, are we okay? Are we broken up? Like, what are we? And so he's like, I hate that. That 2 days is miserable for me. And she's like, I need that 2 days because I don't want to talk to him. Then there's a compromise.
Yeah,
right?
But where is the compromise?
Yeah. So because that's you can. Yeah, no, you
because 2 days that's a big
That is,
for example, but that's a big, stat. Like that's a
100%.
big gap for you guys not to be talking. And I get the concept of, okay, maybe right now I'm so mad. Let me give some time to breathe.
course.
But at the same time, so those two parties, how do they come together and find that middle ground, that boundary that they both are comfortable with?
Yeah. Because what I was gonna say something very similar, where it's like who makes the determination? Because let's say he wants to take time, so then now I would have to say, all right, well, I need to respect that boundary and give 100%. Him time. But he can always say, well, I want to talk about it now. He can be like, okay, well, I have to respect the boundary of having the conversation now. How do you find now?
Of course, you have to. Well, I put it on the clients. Like, what do you guys think would work? And then it's gonna have to be.
So it's gonna tip on one side.
It is, but I'm gonna say, what do you think would work for you? What do you think would work for you? Right? And then it's like, well, ideally, I want to talk about it now. Well, ideally, I don't want to talk about it for a week.
Well, let's find the middle ground.
So, what the middle ground is, hey, okay, let's try to compromise here, and I'll throw out some ideas. But usually, I'm like, they're gonna be the ones to figure out, because what works for me in my relationship might not work for them, right?
Right.
So I'm like, well, in that situation, I had them say, okay, 2 days, maybe that's my boundary. You're not allowed. If you want to be with me, you're not allowed to ignore me for 2 days, because that's unhealthy. That's not fair to me. And then the girl was like, well, it's not fair to me if I can't calm down and have my space to figure out even what I'm feeling to talk to you. So she's like, okay, how about we're aware we're fighting and he has to be calm. Like, no, I just have to take my feelings and sit here and give her space. But how about we try at least by the end of the day, and maybe if we don't if we don't even have the full conversation in depth, we can at least be like, hey, are we good?
Yeah, we'll try. And if we're not ready, we'll.
And if not, it's like, and the thing, I remember him saying this particular guy, he said, I don't feel like she loves me when she disconnects for 2 days, right? So I even told her, I'm like, do you still love him when you're quiet, when you ignore him for 2 days? She's 100%. I'm not thinking about breaking up with him or leaving. And I said, do you think it'd be difficult for you to, even when you're mad at him, say, hey, I know we're mad at you right now. I don't want to talk to you, but I still love you. And he was like, I saw his body calm down. He's like, that's it.
A little bit of reassurance.
Right? Even if you're upset, when you love somebody, like, hey, listen, like right now I still can't talk, but just know that I love you and that I'm still there. I just still need some time. And I think it's also very important.
And it was important for him to get to that, because once I was tracking his mind, and when he got to his emotion, he had this fear of like abandonment. Yeah. So in his world, it's like, are we done? And she's like, of course we're not done. I love you, but I just need my space. So once he said, I don't feel, what's the feeling? I feel alone and unloved. And she was like, it's not that I don't love you. And he's like, then tell me you love me even when you're mad at me.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you think that stems like deeper, like from maybe like how we had said before, maybe past experiences of what 100%. We've been used to?
100%. Either parents,
like
history.
Parents or an ex,
Yeah, of course. Of course. And it doesn't have to come out on people. It can just be like feelings in general. When you go back, people say abandonment and they'll sit there and they'll always say, well, I didn't get abandoned by one of my parents, so I don't know where this is coming from. And then they get curious about themselves, and they just had multiple experiences where it's like, yeah, I had some friends that were always, I trusted them, and then they betrayed me, and I don't have that trust anymore, so it feels familiar.
Or some sort of neglect on any.
Yeah.
Man, that's crazy.
It's so amazing how instances like that in the past can literally shape future relationships that, a lot of people don't even realize. Like, hey, this happened 5 years ago and it's still affecting me to this day. So, but ultimately, I think it's so important to, when we talked about it in the past, emotional intelligence is so important when you have to know what you're feeling and to know your partner and say, hey, listen, I'm upset. Going through those emotions, but letting your partner know. I think it's super important. Yeah,
it's also being able to be vulnerable and have that emotional communication to 100%. Say, well, listen, maybe I don't get you, but I want to try. Because this is how I'm feeling, and I want you to see how I'm feeling. And maybe that'll kind of guide you, so I can now understand what you're feeling. 100%.
It's in all type of relationships, not just intimate relationships, friendships, family, whatever.
Professional.
Professional. We can always agree to disagree, but help me try to understand you.
I am the same way, because at least now I won't have to fight you. Even if I don't agree, I at least see why you believe what you believe.
100%. And that's why I believe people's stories are important. I had somebody ask me once, are you attached to all your clients? Like, do you like all your clients? I said, I love all my clients. Some of them are harder than others, but they said, why? I was like, because you can't judge somebody when you know their story. Right. So if they're sitting in there and they're they're coming in and they're like, oh, here's my shit show of like, I'm doing this, or I'm a drug addict and I've done this and I've cheated on this. And I'm like, hey, that's okay. And when you hear somebody's story of this is why I am the way I am, you have empathy, right? It's like, oh, does that mean I'm going to excuse your behavior? No, that's a shitty behavior, right? You keep cheating on these girls, unhealthy. But if you're like, I wonder what you're feeling and wonder what you've been through and help me understand that so we can fix that so you're not driven to have that behavior anymore.
But I think that can be also, it's a shitty way of seeing it because there's a little bit of selfishness there because I think most people who have a story or they have an experience that they can relate to are more willing to accept someone else's as opposed to someone who's probably never experienced what you've experienced. I'm going to be like, well, I can't relate, so I don't care. It doesn't make sense in my head.
But I feel like if you're empathetic, then you'll understand. Like you'll try to put yourself in that position.
But I feel like only people who have gone through things would probably be more. I mean, I'm relating to a personal story because someone shared something that they were going through, and I was just like, it was hard for them to wrap around. It was about some guy that left her, and it was for a specific reason. But I'm just like, listen, like. You can't blame them for their decisions if they don't want to understand. You can only do what you can on your part. And if they don't want to listen, I mean, that's on them. They don't have to really listen to you. You can only show that you want to explain and you want to be yourself and be vulnerable. And it's up to them if they want to kind of, come back to you. But not everyone is willing to say, okay, well, I'm listening to you. And I feel like most people who have gone through something or maybe have a similar story would be more willing to be more empathetic.
I agree and I disagree.
That's what I like. I like that.
I agree that if somebody has been through something similar, right?
Or relatable.
We've all been through a breakup. So
maybe unrelated, but still something that's very impactful to what's happened to you. That maybe no one has ever understood you.
Uh-huh.
And then finally someone's coming to you with an issue. And then you're like, you know what? I've had an experience of me sharing something that they didn't want to understand. And it was important to me. Now you're sharing this with me. I'm going to be more understanding because I never got that.
Because you've experienced it. So you're like, I know your pain, right? But if I'm with you and I care about you, strangers, maybe not. I might be like, I don't really care about your story because I don't care to attach to you. I don't really, okay, strangers tell me their story and I might say, oh, damn, that sucks. And I might have sympathy. Which sympathy is saying, which is hard for doing what I do because I'm empathetic all day and I'm trained to be in your story with you. Yeah. A lot of us are like, oh yeah, somebody just passed away, and it's like, what's the first thing we do as humans? Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, apologize. Yeah.
When you say I'm so sorry, that's like, it's like, don't feel bad for me. You know what I mean? The other person's just like, no, it's okay. But if I'm like, oh my God, I know exactly what you're feeling. I lost somebody too. Now I'm in it with you. Yeah. So that's what you're talking about. It's like we have a similar experience, but if I actually love somebody, friend, family, intimate partner, I'm like, let me in it with you so that I can try to, I might not fully
feel what you feel,
but I'm going to try my best to jump in your shoes and say, if I was you and I was going through this, I want to know what it feels like. And if you allow yourself to feel it, you're in it with them.
I think it requires just an extra bit of effort to be like open to that.
Of course.
I mean, yeah, but if it's a person that you care for, I think you're going to
True,
make that effort.
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah, you ideally you'd like to make that effort.
Of course.
Right?
Sitting at a bar with a stranger and they're telling me their story, I'm not going to be like, let me jump in it with you because I don't really care enough about you to want to give my energy into that, right?
Right.
Have you ever had like like clients or maybe a relationship or a couple that has had that revelation in front of you where they probably never understood until they said, oh, now I see why, or let me make more of an effort to listen to you and understand what you're going through?
Yeah. All the time.
Like that mental eye opening, like, oh,
Yeah, well, I guess you mentioned it almost with like that ice cream, the what you had said earlier, where it's like, oh, well, it's almost like, oh, okay, well, now I'm trying to understand why.
Of course, and in relationships, that's important because you're not going to like what your significant other does, but if you're not understanding why they're doing it, you don't have empathy. You're like, no, you're just doing this behavior that's annoying me. But if you understand why, like, so if I give the example, I had a couple, and it was crazy. Like I saw. Oh my gosh! See, I'm getting emotional even talking about it. The long story short, they have a lot of stuff going on, and they never had talked about each other's history. Like they kind of knew the basics of, oh, I know how her family was, her dad, but you don't know how wounded people go back to like family stuff, right? And that's how the mind's formed. It's you're growing up with parents, family dynamics. That's your first kinship.
Yeah.
It's like how you learn. So they're in a relationship, and something happened, and his wife was in the car, and she had surgery, and they're parked in the parking lot, and the lady goes, I guess she was like crying because the husband gets out and goes into the store and then drops the car off, and she's just like, "You're not going to leave me, are you?" And he was just like, "Babe, what's going on?" Like, "No, I'm not going to leave you. Are you crazy?" Like, yeah. She's like, but she would just get out of surgery, so she was on some anesthesia, but she just had so many emotions. And she said, "I just don't understand. Like, you always walk out on me. Like, you always walk out." He's like, "What do you mean?" Like, and so they get in that fight all the time. It's like a dance of theirs. Like, every time they get in a fight and he walks out, she's like, "He always leaves when things are hard. He always leaves when things are hard." And so he's just like, "Damn, bro, I can't ever win. Like, we're in a fight. I'm trying to avoid fighting more. And it's always like, you leave me." But then she's in a session, and I asked her, I'm like, "How did you grow up?" And she was like, she starts crying because she knew what was going on. So they start talking about, she's like, "Yeah, he was in the car." And they start talking about that scene. And she said, "When I was younger, every time my dad got upset with me, he ignored me and walked out." And he was like, the husband turned over and goes, "Is that what happened when you were in the car?"
I didn't even know.
And you felt something. And she was having that's body memory. She was like, "Yeah, every time you walk out on me, I feel abandoned," right? Like, and it's nothing to do with him actually, right? It's her own stuff. But you could see his shift of like, "I never want you to feel like that. Like, what do you need from me?" Then he was more of like, "What do you need?" And she's like, "When we're fighting, can you not leave? Even if we're fighting, go to the next room, but don't leave the house. I feel like I'm a little kid again, not safe. I feel like I'm alone and abandoned." And he moved into this empathy state that he innately went. I've never seen them touch in a session. And he grabbed her hand.
I'm about to cry.
Yeah. And I was like, over there as a therapist still trying to keep it together, like, "Oh my God." And he was like, the empathy. Yeah, I know. See, you feel
my
it.
eyes are watering, dude.
But see, as soon as you see that in sessions though, it's like, let me understand why. Because in his world, he's like, "This girl's freaking crazy. She cries every time I leave the house. She's so stupid. She's so psycho." And she's like, let me tell you about the feeling I had as a little girl when my dad walked out on me. Like, every time he would never try to hear me. So can you at least try to hear me when we're fighting? Mm-hmm. And that would mean a lot to me. And he was like, "Babe, I got you." And like when they come in now, like they're more excited to learn. He's like, the next session they came in, I remember he was like not wanting to come in. So that hooked him. And he came in the next session. I was like, "Hey, you look nervous." He's like, "I'm actually excited because if I can learn more about that stuff that she went through and it helps me realize why we're fighting, I'm excited because now we're growing and we're not staying. Now I'm understanding how to be a better partner." And he's like, "I want to be with you. I'm here for it. And I want to figure out these things." Yeah, but people's history.
Exactly. I mean, you need to have that information in order to have those tools to kind of go through these problems together. Because if you don't know about what's going on, what happened to you 20 years ago, and this is why this is why you are the way you are, how can I fix that behavior?
Of course.
And why do you think that he never knew? Is it because maybe she just didn't want to bring it up? Did you identify that? Like, did she?
I helped her identify that, and then I don't think she knew that that's where it was coming from. But they didn't talk in depth about history, right? You're like, "Okay, I know your dad wasn't there for you, and I know your mom." Basic, that's surface level stuff, you know. I know kind of how you grew up, but if you tell me like, "Let me tell you the pain and shit I went through growing up," like, no, I did feel like this when I was little, and not to blame my parents, but why do I have clients even go back into history? And a lot of people say, "Oh, I am the way I am because my family was this," and I said, but I never want to keep a client angry with their family or anybody. I'm saying, let's go back to understand it. That way we can work on it, not to blame, because everybody's wounded. Your parents are doing the best with what they have.
Exactly, because it happened to them with their parents probably, or something similar.
Of course.
So it's always a root issue.
Of course.
Man, it's tremendous. Yeah. Do you feel like in that instance, for example, like she had that trauma decades after it happened? Is there any way you can get out of that trauma that happened to you, or is this okay? This happened to you as a child.
It's more of like an acceptance and understanding of it, rather than getting past it,
getting over it. Is that
or do they go hand in hand? You get over it by accepting and understand it.
You never get over it.
Right.
It's like,
that was my question.
So
it's like a scar.
It's a scar, but the therapy I do too, it's a body mind therapy, and we do a lot of stuff with like the body memory. So if somebody is in a trauma, which is, we talk about severe trauma, but the stuff we're talking about is normal everyday life generational trauma, which is like, this is just how we're raised. Military mindset, for example, just be tough and get over it. Okay. But then your body's like, what if you actually want that hug, or you're like, but I'm not supposed to ask for one that makes me weak. Right. So you have that, but then your body's craving, your body needs certain things. You see people self-soothe all the time.
Yeah.
You know, and that means they're needing something. And so I pick up with that in sessions. I had a client, recent client, and she was trauma, rape victim. And instantly, it was the first thing she was talking about her trauma. She starts going like this.
Like comforting herself.
Like she's like, and I'm like, do you need anything right now? She's like, no, I got this. What's that voice?
I've done it before.
Right. What do you mean? I don't need anybody. And she has that in her history.
Right.
Like, I don't need anybody. I'll figure everything out by myself. I got this. It's done. It's over. There's nothing I can do about it. And I was like, this is really creepy, but can I try something? She was like, yeah. She trusts me. So she's like, this is creepy, but just go with it. I said, can you grab that pillow on the couch? And this is the kind of therapy I'm trained in. It's called PBSP. It's like, it's trying to get body feelings met that are.
What does that stand for?
It's a pest avoidance psychomotor system. It's like a huge.
Oh, got that.
It's a huge thing. It's actually a European-based therapy it's newer in here, but it's a lot of like just an emotional-based therapy. So we're trying to track the body memory, because when people go back into trauma, you don't want to keep them in it, because it's like what you're saying. It's like, can you get over it? Mm-hmm. You can't erase that memory, and your body can erase that feeling either.
Right.
Right. So, but to not keep you in that state. So when that client's in my session, and I said, grab that pillow. And she put the pillow, I was like, just put it in your arms. So even that interaction with a pillow, which ideally it would be a person, right? But she put the pillow, and I was like, hey, I know you're in the trauma right now, and that's scared, you feel unprotected. She held the pillow, and as soon as she grabbed onto it, she hugged it even tighter and started crying. I was like, what are you feeling? She goes, I feel calmer. Which shows me when she's in the trauma, what does she want? She doesn't know how to calm herself down. Ideally back there, she would have needed
comfort,
somebody to comfort her, but she's not allowing people to comfort her. Does that make sense?
But how do you? So how did that progress then? Because if she doesn't allow it, and was this like a wake up for her that she's like, oh, maybe I do need someone?
Yeah, and it brought it to her awareness. I was like, how did that feel? She goes, calm. I was like, do you want to open up and ask people in your life, like, hey, I'm scared. Maybe you do need what do you need? It's trying to get her curious of, I wonder what I need.
Yeah, because that's a little scary, because one thing is realizing it, but then one thing is actually putting it into action.
Of course.
And because then once it's in front of you, like, let's say, okay, I'm realizing something now, but now in the real world, I'm going out, and maybe you may start getting closer to me. All I've done my whole life is stop.
Of course.
How do you
reaction, right?
But say that example of and that was just something quick and simple I did in a session just to get her into a calming state. But if she normalizes that calm feeling, she'll know how to go to it more quickly. Her body's not going to stay in the negative trauma all the time. It's like now you're forming new neural pathways.
It's like now it's additional learning for her to
like,
slowly.
Here's my old pathways of survival, and those we can't erase. But this is starting to form like, oh, calmness of actually letting somebody help you. That feels calm. I like that. It's a foreign feeling. So at first you're like, but then the more you normalize that in your body, your brain becomes receptive to like, oh, this is okay too. Oh, this, and then that starts forming in your brain.
It's almost relearning. The whole emotional structure of like, what is going on right now, and like, let me teach myself. And then, it's amazing that humans, we go through so much trauma through our lives, but ultimately it's up to us, and we're not defined by what happened to us in the past. So I think
for sure,
incredible.
So what you're saying of what ideally is, no, you cannot erase and just get over it.
Right.
It's just like, I think we had said that, like, hey, don't be depressed, just be happy. That doesn't work. It's like, all right, now I'll act like I'm happy, but inside I'm still sad. Instead of, okay, like, nope, I still have this memory here. It still sucks when it comes up. Or these strategies that are still here that I have to fight every day. It's like, oh, I don't want to ask for help, but I know I can, and I can get that met, and that's okay too. So now you have like, it's balancing it out more than just having one to go off of. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I wanted to go back a little bit to the previous clients that you're referring to. Do you feel that sometimes when it comes to the communication or the avoiding, because you had mentioned how she had opened up about her trauma and how she was feeling when he would walk away because of her father or whatever.
Right.
Do you feel like there's a part of it comes from, well, I don't want to bring it up because I don't want to make him uncomfortable, like that boundary of
like avoiding the situation altogether, like you don't want to trigger him?
Yeah, because if I tell him, then he'll leave. I'd rather not even bring it up because I might hurt his feelings.
Yeah, because you can't be worried about his feelings.
Right.
Direct but kind.
This is the direction. Yes, but also the direction that I wanted to go in.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, if you're saying like an example, I don't even know if we can just throw out an example.
Well, do you think that maybe that's a reason why she never brought it up in the first place for that client, that she's like, oh, well, I don't want to say it because then he might think that I'm crazy. And
yeah, and I think a lot of people aren't aware that they're telling themselves that. It's like, I just don't want to have that conversation. But when we're in a session or I'm just talking and I'm saying, well, why are you so scared? If I put that voice out, it's like, well, I didn't want to ask him because I was worried that he might just walk out on me and then I'm going to be alone. What if he leaves me?
Yeah.
I'm like, why is that even there?
Yeah, and you start accepting that kind of that emotional state of, well, I could be explaining it, but I'd rather not.
Yeah, and then it's like, well, then you're going to stay in the same feeling too, unless I'm like, okay, well, what if you ask him and he's willing, he's not going to go anywhere? That's something you have to address is why are those voices there to begin with? Am I worried about getting left? Am I worried about, I don't want to tell my boyfriend I don't like this behavior because what if he breaks up with me?
I think ultimately lies down on even being vulnerable, but trust. I think, right, when you trust this person enough to, okay, like I can confide in this person, I can be vulnerable. And yeah, I might hurt him, but he knows that I'm going to be there no matter what, and they're going to be there no matter what. So when you have that emotional connection with that person and that trust, I think it makes things a lot easier. Like I can confide in you, I can be open about it. And you might be upset, but ultimately we have that trust with each other where I'm not going to hurt you. Even if I might hurt you, but it's for the
not
best.
Malicious.
Exactly. It's for the best. And maybe I'm trying to help you ultimately. That's the goal, right? But when you have that foundation, where you have that trust and that intimacy, you make it so much easier.
Yeah, for sure.
This could be in anything, the relationship, if it's romantic or when you're with somebody that you're dating, goes even to, especially I think when your sex life, right?
Yeah, we spoke about it yesterday. Yeah. And that was one of the adamant. I mean, I literally wrote it down because we really got into it. It was sex and connection and sex and ego were the things that I wrote down because of whether it be that you found a lot of the clients that their sex was off and they didn't understand why. It got deeper than just what was happening.
Yeah, a whole bunch of stuff. So there's I see that a lot with individuals that talk about, relationships, connections, and then couples in general. So if we're talking about the realm of sex in general, sex is connecting. But if you're not connected outside of sex, what is sex actually doing for your relationship?
We spoke about it yesterday.
Yeah.
And then we said toxic sex is the best sex.
But is it?
And then we started dissecting it.
Do we think that it's the best sex? In the moment, it might feel like this is great, but why? Because that's the only positive. There can be different depending on the people, obviously, and everybody's wounded different. Like I'm going to always repeat that. But if you're saying toxic sex is great, are you disconnected in every other aspect of the relationship? So the sex is sex is a high. When you're having sex with somebody, all your endorphins in your brain are like, yeah, it's like a drug. So you're getting high for a second. You're connecting with that person in that intimate, physical way. But then you come out of it and it's like, all right, well, now we're disconnected and we don't actually like each other or we don't want to be together. So, toxic sex then because it's chasing that high.
It's all we got,
right?
Essentially. Yeah. But that's what you associate of having the best sex because just everything else is so, I won't say depressing, but
it's
just such a low.
Right, of course. And then we talked about that yesterday where I said, and even my past experiences, and I have clients talk about this all the time, when you're in a relationship and you're not having deep, meaningful conversations or you're not challenging each other, you're not connected in other ways, the mind or other ways people connect, just like little intimacy thing or like wanting to spend time together, like really getting to know one another, then sex becomes like, oh, let's talk about sex. Like now we're having the conversations about sex because we know how to connect with sex. It's like now we're having great, amazing sex, but that's the only thing we have. So we're going to make it the best. But when that's gone, it's like, well,
what else is there?
I'm really starting to picture this because you would think that if all you have like toxic sex is the best sex, it's because there's such a spike, right?
Of course.
But it's almost like, okay, well now we're increasing the rest of the relationship where now it might not, you would think, oh, okay, well sex won't spike as high as it before, but I feel like it would only spike even higher based on where this, like, I don't want to say the new low is, but if we're so in tune emotionally and we're having conversations about sex, now the sexual chemistry is only going to be even higher than what it was before. Right. When it was just toxic sex.
For sure. But you have to be talking about it.
Yeah,
that's and that's the thing. A lot of people are talking about sex or craving that sex when they're disconnected elsewhere. But a person that you're maybe connected with emotionally, maybe you don't have the need to talk about sex or to crave sex with them all the time because you're connected in other ways. But yeah, if you're having conversations and having sex conversations too, that can peak in both ways. But it might not feel as high. That's the thing.
You don't. Well, that's what I'm saying. Because wouldn't you think that it'll peak higher because you have more of a balance of that emotional health? If I thought my toxic sex was the best sex because it's all the way up here, but now with my new partner, I am so emotionally connected on a higher level. The sex is only going to get even higher than what you thought your previous peak was with the toxic partner.
Yeah, to a point. I understand what you're saying, but I also think, and I don't know, I'm not saying this is accurate or right, but I also think there's a level of like that. If you only do a certain drug one time, so this the toxic sex, you're not having sex all the time usually, right? Yeah, it's almost and you're in a relationship where
the curve, it's like more of a bell curve, I would say.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're with somebody and you're emotionally connected, but you're probably having more sex, right? So it's like you have sex multiple times a week. It's like, all right, we're having sex, but that toxic person is like, we haven't had sex in a few months, and now I'm craving you more, and now I'm like ready to take that drug and get high, and now I'm getting it, and so now it's like, I crave it more, and then you have the downfall. Instead for what you're saying, it's maybe more connecting sex, but you're having it more frequently, so it's maybe not as high every time. Because it's like a drug. You take a drug,
right.
The more you take it, the more you get used to it, and then you're like, oh no, I need more. Instead of
So I guess when you have that toxic sex, it's more of like a contrast where everything is really, most of the time it's bad. And
I think it's comparable,
up, right?
Because I think the comparison to the rest of the relationship is just so low that it's that drug spike.
Yeah,
of course. If you're disconnected everywhere else, that's just like I'm craving it now. Right. When you're really connected with somebody emotionally, you might want to be like, oh yeah, right now we had a great conversation. Now I really want to have sex with you because I'm connected with you like emotionally. And now I'm like, let's do it. Yeah. But if the other person, you're just like, oh, I'm craving sex with you because I'm so disconnected. So we're going to have some great sex. And then that's going to go away. And I'm going to be like, back to disconnection. Now I'm going to wait and I'm going to chase that high again because I'm going to try to connect with you. I have no other way.
It's crazy how your mind like associates.
Terrible though.
Because you would think like an actual drug like boom or whatever, boom. And that's like something you're putting into your body, but your own body is developing these like same stimulants and like endorphin spikes and stuff. Crazy.
Yeah. It's all emotion, see?
Wow.
It's all emotional based.
And you've dealt with clients who have because I know we talked about it yesterday where there's almost a disconnect or a concern of saying, well, look, I don't like this, or how can we make sex better? But you just kind of accept it, right?
Yeah, because what we talked about, because we're always scared to hurt our partner's feelings.
It's the ego, right?
It's like, I don't want to hurt your feelings. Like, I don't like what we're doing in bed, but I don't want him to feel like he's not doing good. So I'm just going to shut up about it.
Or her.
I said him because it was me talking.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So how do you break that? How do you
tell us about it. I mean, you got a lot of energy there.
No, I think the rebel's hitting.
How do you create that uncomfortable but yet necessary conversation, like when you're with somebody?
I mean, and then sex is just an example, but with everything, we'll focus on sex, but being that, how do you transition to be more comfortable and have that open dialogue with your partner?
Direct but kind. Direct but kind. And so what that means is, I'm not going to sit here and be like, hey, our sex life sucks. Right? Because you're like, well, damn, I thought we were having. But hey, babe, I love you. And our sex is it's kind of getting a little boring for me. What about you? Like, is there any way like this?
Just imagine.
What? And you might be hurt about that. You're like, what do you mean? I thought we were having great sex. What do you mean? I'm not. And then of course that's that ego thing you were talking about, right? Right. But I'd rather you tell me like, hey, like things are getting boring, and us be able to say, okay, yeah. So is there anything we can do? What do you like? Let's have these conversations. What do you like that I do?
No, I completely agree. But just imagine if you're with someone for like 2, 3, 5, 10 years, and then they drop this bomb on you. You're like, yo, this whole time.
Sex is gonna be boring after 10 years, though.
Yeah, well, okay, I think 10 years is too much. Yeah. Maybe let's say like two years or 1 year even, where you're like, oh, sex. I like having sex with you. we can probably, change things up or do this instead, or I prefer you do this. It can be interpreted by the other partner being like, oh, so you'd rather me do this? Like, that means that you haven't been liking it then.
Doesn't mean.
No, but it can challenge the ego.
You can still like it. Yeah, definitely.
Of course.
Challenge you, but.
Of course. And it might hurt the other person. Like, damn, my guy's been just not telling me what he likes this whole time. But I might be hurt. Like, am I not good enough? Am I not doing something right? Instead of I'm not doing anything wrong. It's just, how are we going to make it better and more enjoyable?
Yeah, but imagine, because I think once the conversation occurs, then the only way to go is up. But that, like, how do you transition to actually having that initial conversation when that time comes? Like, how do you prep like your partner to say, I think we need to talk about our sex?
Remember, I think I told you yesterday, my boyfriend, poor guy. Like, I love you.
That guy.
That's right.
I love you.
But he knows that already. He knows that when you say that, it's like, all right, hit me across the face with it.
I've literally have said the line. I use it all the time. I'm like, hey, like, this is why I'm having the conversation with you, because I love you, right? And I hope when you like try to understand me, I want to understand you. I want to know what you like. If I'm sleeping with you, you're my man. I've told my boyfriend this. Like, I want to know the things you like, because why are we doing this stuff if you're like, that's okay, but I like when she does the other thing better. Or I've slept with girls before and I obviously know what I like, and that's where things start getting like, oh, okay, well, you've been with other people and you know what you like from other people. But you don't have
be
to
with her then.
Of course. Yeah. don't have sex with me. Go have sex with her, right? But I'm just saying that you don't have to say it like that. Because there's a line of a boundary of like, I don't have to give you like, I had sex with this person and I really liked it. It's like, no, I know my body and I know what I like, and let's teach each other so we can enjoy sex in the best way possible. There doesn't have to bring that. Let me bring everybody in I've been with to compare.
It's a way of doing it, the delivery, right?
I'm not comparing. I'm not comparing because I want to be with the other person. I'm saying I know everybody's different. Their bodies are different. So can we talk about it?
Plus, we're all adults. Like,
yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's how do you become better at something? Like, like you got to talk about it.
Yeah.
And I think ultimately the best way to do it is how you're even saying it. It's like you're setting it up from the beginning. You start dating somebody, and as you become more serious, like, hey, listen, like, tell me what you like, not just in sex, but in general. It goes to every aspect.
Yeah.
Like, let's be vulnerable. Let's communicate. Hey, listen, what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? Even almost And once you set this up, those conversations don't become that uncomfortable anymore. It's not like it's a bombshell. Like, oh my God, we've been doing this for the past 5 years. Why are we even at this point? Like, let's do this from the beginning. So I think that will be good.
And what you said about being uncomfortable, that's the thing. The first time you ever talk about it, it's going to feel weird because it's a first time. Anything a first time is uncomfortable.
True, but it'll be what you're saying. To your point, it'll be a lot less weird if very early on in the relationship, you guys have such fluidity with the conversations and your emotions and being able to be vulnerable that no matter what, it's almost like, okay, well, you're feeling uncomfortable about something. Well, let's talk about it before it gets into anything. So you're already kind of
setting the groundwork.
Foundation.
Yeah, the foundation.
But we've had this conversation where it's like, why do men suck at having sex? Where we made a conversation.
Why do men suck at having sex?
Why do men suck at sex?
Yeah, that was the title of the conversation.
Yeah, clickbait.
Right. But and I was telling him at the time, like when I'm with somebody after like I'm dating them exclusively, I asked like, hey, did you like the sex? Like, what did you like? What did you not like? And obviously you're not gonna ask that. Yeah, obviously you're not gonna ask that after the first time. Maybe not. Like, you just whatever. But if you're with them exclusively, yeah, like let me know. And then it's like, but it's obviously the way you present it to them, and then they can say, hey, listen, I loved it, but like maybe you can do this next time, or I've done, you want to do this, or let's try this one.
Of course.
And it's like, okay, let's open this up in a healthy manner. Direct but kind.
Yes.
But I think that's a good way to do it,
Well,
we're all adults.
You're also initiating. You're the one that's being like, okay, you know what? We're not gonna fuck around. Well, yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah. No pun intended.
Hey, jinx.
But like, yeah, so if I'm opening myself up and be like, hey, listen, what do you think about the sex? Now you're comfortable enough to say, maybe, okay, he asked me now.
Yeah, we spoke about it yesterday.
Yeah,
like, if I'm willing to be vulnerable, it'll not incentivize you, but also encourage you to be like, well, okay.
Yeah.
I can be vulnerable too.
I want to, contribute.
For sure.
Pause. Rerouting.
But I think ultimately, especially when we're like in our late 20s now, like if you can't have that conversation with that person and be vulnerable with them and say, hey, listen, maybe I like this or I don't like that too much, man, like you're having sex with this person, you're already being intimate with them, like why not have that dialogue?
For sure. If you're gonna be with this person, if you're planning on marrying them or being with them the rest of your life, I hope you're having this conversation, unless you're gonna accept my sex might be boring the rest of my life.
That I never understand. Like you married with this person years and years, and then you were like, oh, the sex was whatever, or I didn't really like the sex. Well, why didn't you ever say anything? You know.
Of course.
And yes, you know, some men are, or vice versa, they're more open to that.
Yeah.
And some people feel more comfortable, like, okay, I can have this discussion with him.
It reminds me of this post. Oh yeah, finish.
Yeah. Or you know, they'll make me more comfortable to have the discussion. Or there's some men or some women who make it really uncomfortable to even have that discussion. It's like, man, I can't even talk about this, like what you were saying earlier, because if I talk about it, they're gonna get upset, or they're just gonna shut down, and I don't want that, so I'm not gonna say anything. But I like to believe that if you're in a healthy relationship, you're gonna overcome that.
Or being curious, why are you getting so upset that we're talking about it?
Yeah,
See,
like,
that's
so
the
what
emotion.
Is it exactly?
So
Why
every time I bring up sex, you seem to get upset. What's going on? Is there like, do you want to? What happens when I bring it up?
So
that'll bring that awareness too. See.
Well, I want to dive into that, but I wanted to circle back to what was that? I had reposted this because someone tweeted, once in college, this girl got drunk and spilled her guts to me about how horrible her boyfriend was and how he was bad in bed and always flirted with other girls in front of her. Anyway, they're engaged. It's like, why does this happen? Why do you think this occurs?
Because you want to be with somebody that bad? I don't know. There's, I mean, a variety of reasons. It just depends. Like, that girl has her own stuff. Wonder, or maybe they had the conversation. We don't even know.
Do you think, well, maybe, do you think bad sex is a deal breaker?
Like is bad sex a deal breaker?
Yeah, because you had responded and we're like, oh, well, unless the sex is bad for the rest of your life.
Is that something that maybe?
Do you think communication can be enough to work on it, or?
I do.
Yeah.
I do, because I feel like everybody's teachable.
It's like a sport.
It's a sport.
It's like a sport.
The way you said it was funny. It's a sport.
Yeah.
It's a sport.
I mean, look, think about the first time you've had sex. It was, for me, it was a disaster. So have you gotten better at it?
2 seconds.
Yeah, something like that.
I'm up to a nice 5.
Yeah, but yeah, as I guess you can get better at it, right? As long as you're open and willing to learn.
Yeah, if you're especially if you're talking about it, I don't. If you're open to say this is what I like and I'm willing to try what you like.
Yeah.
And it's also having like at that moment, like being like, I feel like it shouldn't always be like maybe intimate. It should be like, you know what, let's explore. Like let's have fun with it. Like, hey, let's
try something new.
Yeah, what is it that you like? Or let's start, seeing where this goes.
Of course.
And then she whips out like a dildo and the strap on. You're like, whoa,
this is way too much. This is where I set my boundaries.
Yeah. It's like, hey babe, I think we should try anal. Boom, she pulls out the strap on.
Not this way.
Nah, this is not. This is where I set the boundary.
Oh,
but having this conversation.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to what we were saying. Do you remember?
I said you can stay curious. Like, why am I bringing up every time I bring up sex?
Yeah.
Right? Every time I bring up sex, you're like, I don't want to talk about it. Why? Like, why?
So
I think in this, if that was my relationship, right? This is something I know for me, we need to talk about. Because if we're not going to talk about sex and our sex is going to be boring, maybe it is a deal breaker for me. Right? So maybe I'm like, oh, damn, I need something more sexually. Can we sit down and talk about it? Because I want to be with you.
Mm-hmm.
So if we sit down and talk about it, we'll figure it out. I'm confident because I love you. We're going to figure it out. But if you're like, no, I don't want to talk about it.
And then that would be a deal breaker, right?
But if you don't want to talk about it,
what can I do?
Tell me why. Yeah. What is your why? I don't know. You do know. See?
Yeah.
Have you ever had that example with a client?
Example of
this same thing that you're saying. Have you ever encountered that like with clients and identified what it was?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of clients talk about this, especially you have married couples that are like married for years and I always teach too, and I learned this, I don't even know, a long time ago. When it comes to like couples, everything we're learning is about emotions and getting high. Like humans, we crave getting high. So love is a drug. When you first meet somebody, why do people get so attached, or you want to spend all your time with that person? You're like, oh, you're new, you're exciting. And that's when I always say girls always get dressed up and are like, oh, I'm seeing him tonight and I'm going to look all hot. And guys are like, oh, I want to impress her and I'm going to spend my money and all that stuff, right? And then you're on a high and then you're like, oh, we're hanging out all day, every day. We don't want to see our friends. It's like tunnel zone, right? Yeah. And then you get to this point of like, okay, now we've been together for a year. And now once you hit the peak of a relationship, which is like, okay, we're on a high, we're climbing, I like you, okay, I'm intrigued by you. And then you guys commit. So commitment, depending on the couple, can be sex. It can be are you with me? Are we committed? Are you my boyfriend? Are we married? Whatever it may be. This is what sucks about relationships. Once that happens, the high starts going down.
And you may never
you can't get back up there.
Or you'll
surpass. If that's you become a sex addict. Or you jump from relationship to relationship, right? Because it's like you're chasing the high. of the love high of this is new and exciting. But then when clients get down here, sorry, I'm messing this up. When clients get down here, when the high comes down, we call it the power struggle stage. Now it's the girl's like, I'm going to wake up. You're going to see me with no makeup on because I don't care to get dressed up for you anymore. And the guy's like, well, guess what? Now I don't want to buy this dinner because I can't afford it. Can you help me? And it's like, now it's like, well, who are you? You know, who are you now that the high's gone? Now that's when everybody's wounds come out. Like, now I can tell you that you piss me off when you don't clean the dish in the sink because now you're going to see me. Why are you so frustrated? Well, now we're vulnerable. Wow, we have to either choose to be vulnerable and say, the hard conversations are meant to be had, and the sex is probably boring, not as high anymore because you're like, okay, I've already had sex with this person this many times. It's not the new like, oh, I'm gonna have sex with her, and this is fun and exciting. It's like now I know her sex and I know I've already had her, and that's when guys are like, oh, I want to go, girls too. I want to go to the next person because it's new and exciting. Instead of in a relationship, you have to say, now we're here, now we have to talk about all the stuff that actually we feel and what bothers us, or else, hey, let's just break up and let's start again. The high, now it's like, ooh, I don't want to have the hard conversation, so let's just break up and start again.
So if you don't break up, the uncomfortable conversations will bring you back to another high. Then so like now if a relationship reaches that high and it starts to level out where, oh, okay, well now I can be myself, more of myself. I don't have to put on makeup or I don't have to pay for shit anymore. How does now a couple after those conversations kind of
those vulnerable conversations, the hard conversations that people don't want to have because they don't want healthy relationships, obviously, because they're hard conversations, they give you moments of high. Does that make sense? It's not like you're not going to fully be like, because every relationship is like okay, you're not always going to be happy with your significant other. You're going to piss me off. We're dating for years. I know you. I know the things that piss me off now, but we're going to talk about it. Hey, babe. Okay. Like, but it's like, hey, if we can sit down and have this hard conversation, now I have that. Ooh, now I'm connected with you. Or are you going to piss me off again? 100%. But we're like, oh, okay, we talked about this. We're getting better. And then, okay, you might make me angry the next day, but there's moments of high. If you're going to stay here, it's like, now I just don't even want to be with this person because everything's stagnant and we're not growing, you know? Or people end up cheating, or now I want to find something better. This new girl's so exciting. I think I like her more than the girl I'm with. Is she exciting, or is she exciting because she's a new person?
Yeah, that you actually like her, or it's just like that new feeling of the high again.
You're on the high.
The honeymoon phase a lot of times also.
It's a honeymoon. See, that is
or like
a
chase.
That is that. Yeah.
That up is the honeymoon. The honeymoon's like, wait till you hit that 8 month a year mark where you're like, oh shit.
That's when you think that's when it happens.
I always say, wait till 8 months. It's like people are like, yeah, I love this guy. I just met him last month. I'm like, tell me about that after 8 months.
Hey.
Well, have you read the book The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman?
A long time ago.
So did I, and he had put the statistic that 2 years in the relationship is when things start to that honeymoon phase is really gone, where it's like, if you're going to push through, you got to make sure you know how to communicate with your partner,
100%.
Which Dr. Heasty, he does not agree fully, but I think we came to a compromise where it's necessary to have 5 love languages to communicate properly, emotionally and sexually in the relationship. But ultimately it's not what's necessary. But anyways, back to Gary Chapman. He says that within those 2 years, you got to now understand, the honeymoon phase might be over. Like now you're kind of just like, you know who you are, you know what you're doing. You kind of already understand the patterns. How do you now properly continue communicating to further progress the relationship? And that is how, when you understand if his is physical touch, I would then, like, in a partnership, his girlfriend or his girl would have to be, hey, let's hold hands or a hug, whatever. And that's usually, but it's after the 2 year mark. So I guess it kind of fits in with your model.
Yeah, I always just say that just because 8 months is usually just, and it might not be completely, but the longer you go, obviously 2 years, it's like you're in it, you know.
Yeah, that's true. Because like 8 months is like getting close to a year where you're like, holy shit, this is real.
Yeah, I've been with the same person for 8 months. Like, is this really what I want?
Yeah, am I gonna hit a year with this person?
Yeah, for sure.
1 year.
Oh shit. Or you don't have the conversations, and then you are like, I want to have sex with another person. The sex is boring. I've heard that from my guy friends. I've heard that from my friends. I've heard it from clients. It's like, okay, we're on the sex topic. Sex is boring. Well, why don't you talk to them about it? You guys have been together for a year. You probably are doing the same shit, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, I go in, we do the same thing. She does this. It's like, oh, okay. It's like, now we're having sex because now we're supposed to, and we're in a relationship. And I'm like, well, that sounds awful. Why don't you have a conversation with her? Yeah, I don't want to hurt her feelings.
I don't want it to get uncomfortable.
I don't want it to be weird. Instead of like, babe, love ya, we've been together for a year. Do you think our sex is getting boring? Because, and maybe she's over there like, yeah, I wanted to talk to you about it, but I didn't want to hurt your feelings. Instead of hurt my feelings so we can still be together and work on it.
And I think that also that kind of it says a lot about the relationship, because if you're willing to have that uncomfortable, it's like, well, I said it once about us, because every now and then we get into these little discussions, but I always feel like we come back stronger because it's right. Yeah. You always put that face when I say it too. It's always like, yeah, fuck this guy.
No. I get what you're saying.
And because we kind of go at it, you know, as friends, and sometimes, you know, he'll tell me stuff that makes me uncomfortable, and I'll tell him stuff that makes him uncomfortable, but somehow we always come back stronger.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely, for sure.
That's what friendships are for, though.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah. So I mean, I think all these practices, it's like you said earlier, it's not just about, you know, intimate relationships. It's platonic and professional, everything. Right. So, you know, it's also kind of cool how it all can translate. Yeah. We're all people. We all feel.
Shift. Yeah. Absolutely. Man, I love that.
You're gonna say something.
Oh yeah. What I wanted to ask you is, when you have those like, do you give couples like tips when they're like, hey, like the sex is boring? Do you just tell them, hey, like have that discussion with them, or do you give actual like maybe like practical steps that they can take in order for them to kind of get out of that boredom, you know?
Or do you like refer to someone who can have that?
Like, do you have like tips on how to like spice
like a sexual therapist, sexual expert?
Yeah.
Well, I actually always ask them like, well, why? What are you looking for? What is not there? Okay. A lot of people can say like what they don't like, but it's like, well, what do you want? And you can't communicate that to your partner. So always when they're saying that, like, yeah, my sex is boring, like, how do I talk to my girl about it? I'm like, well, first you have to say what's making it boring and what are you wanting?
Do you think most people know what they want, but they're just afraid of saying it, or maybe they never even thought about it? Because some people say, well, like, sex is boring. Well, what do you want? Well, I don't know.
Like, what do you like when you have sex?
Yeah, and then it's like, what do you not like?
Yeah, because if you like this, then okay, more of this. Yeah, let's transition and work around this and build off of this.
Yeah, I think for your question, I think both, because I think some people do know, like, I'd like to try this. They have this like, either they're embarrassed to talk about it, or they've like watched some stuff, or they've heard stuff. Yeah. It's like
shit on my chest.
Okay, that's pushing it. That's what you like. I'm not judging you. I'm curious about it.
No,
but
mad weird. That's mad weird.
But or there's people that don't know. It's just like you're unaware. It's just like, oh yeah, the sex just sucks. Well, what do you want? Like, I don't know. It's just boring. Well, if you can't tell if your partner's supposed to read your mind, no.
Yeah, mind reader.
Like, yeah, well, the sex is just boring. Well, what is actually making it boring? Why don't you sit down and try to be curious about it, because that's too hard. That's too hard of work, right?
Sure.
Yeah, right. Unless
I'd rather go have sex with somebody new and to be excited.
And that's what I was gonna say. I feel like that sometimes it could be used as like an escape, that where it's like, oh well, sex, you know, it's boring. Oh, I just don't care for it anymore.
Yeah. Right. I just don't care for it. But do you know what you like? If you sat down and like, this is what I know I like in the bedroom, no matter who it is. Do you know yourself? You know.
Yeah. I feel like that's what it is. Because like, if a relationship starts to die down and then there's not even sex there, and you're just like, well, the sex sucks and everything else sucks. Like, I just don't care. I just don't know what it is. I just don't care for it anymore.
Yeah, that's it. I'm out of here.
It's a shame.
Yeah.
I have one more thing right in here. Yes, I had put toxic relationships, like accepting it, but that kind of comes in. Wait, we talked about that yesterday. Yeah. Accepting toxic relationships. We
like
did.
The boundaries that you.
It was with boundaries. How like some people, or we had used women as an example. How they'll let like a toxic guy kind of manipulate, or narcissism to allow them kind of to control them. How do we?
You know what I think this was? I was telling you an example about a client I had who. I said there's a difference. Correct me if this isn't what you're talking about. Okay.
Might be.
There's a difference between needing somebody and wanting somebody, right?
There's also good selfish and bad selfish, so it might circle all together.
Yeah. So when you if I need you for something, like I need you I don't have money. I can't afford my apartment by myself.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, now do I really want to be with you, or do I have a motive that I'm not even aware of that's like, well, what if we he breaks up with me and I can't afford rent by myself? I see that a lot. You know, which
so
sucks.
You stay.
It's like, well, now it's like, is this person staying with me because they want to be with me, or they need to be with me, right? But you see that a lot. Like, and I had one of my clients, and this is what I think we were talking about of, you know, and my heart was breaking for her, because she's like, she never worked. You know, she never had a job. And so there's a lot of cultures and societies, that's how we're set up, right? Women are staying at home. That's how my family's Italian. My grandma stayed home and my grandfather went to work. But what she wanted to leave him, could she?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Or how was she going to financially make it on her own? So my client, I asked her, and she said, "Oh, Alessia, no matter what you tell me," which I'm like, I'm not going to be here to give you advice. I'm here to help you with your emotion. Like, it's your life to live. Like, that's what I believe a therapist's role is. I will never lead you to tell you what to do.
Right.
But she said, I am not going to leave my husband. Ideally, in my world, I was thinking, healthily, she needs to get out of this relationship because it's toxic and it's bad and he's not talking. Like, they just had a lot of messed up stuff going on. So I was helping her through that. But then at the end of the day, she's saying, I get all that, but I'm not leaving him. Okay, then let's just accept that you're not going to leave and you're going to stay, and let's work on you inside of the relationship yourself, and just accept that you're going to have to deal with your emotion and how to get through your emotions while you stay with him. Because now you're just accepting that I'm not going to go anywhere.
But it's kind of contradictory, don't you think, though? 'Cause it's like, if they're unhappy, or like, do they express that they're unhappy, they acknowledge that they're toxic, but I'm not leaving him. Yeah. It's like, okay, well, if you understand how you feel, ideally that may trigger them to say, oh shit, this is toxic, I gotta bounce.
Yeah. And then there's a lot of stuff I'll do. But once you build that awareness of, okay, what are you so scared of? And of course hers was financially, and she's like, oh, well, she built her confidence. Why are you relying on him so much for money? And the next thing you know, she's like, once she starts getting a job and getting more going in herself, she's like, do I actually want to be with this guy?
It's like emotional realization where it's like, wow, I don't need this guy, like you said.
And that's a power play too, because it's like, he already knew, you're not going anywhere. You need me.
Yeah.
Which is shitty, because now you're like, do you want to be in a relationship with a girl? And you see that all the time. Guys are like, I have all this money, I can get all these girls. But at the end of the day, you're getting girls because you have money. The girl that's with you, does she actually like the person you are, like who you are? Or is she just like, well, of course, I just want money. I don't want to have to work. Yeah. If that's the life you want to live, sure, go for it.
Right.
But it's a whole nother thing to go down.
Right. That's going down a rabbit hole.
My goodness. We're almost at the 2 hour mark.
I mean, there's so much we can still talk about, but one thing I wanted to kind of address was, obviously, I have friends who ask me, like, hey, therapy, like, do you recommend it, like couples therapy? Do you ever feel like, I feel like there's a stereotype that people like, oh, therapy is like the last resort. Like, if you go to therapy, the relationship's already virtually over, because you see couples all the time. How often do you see people come back from like their worst days in a relationship to, okay, like we can come through this, rather than, okay, if you go therapy, couples therapy, it's already the death sentence to the relationship, right? So is this something that happens often where people make it back, or that's it?
First, I think my perspective on therapy is good even when relationships are good.
I always say that. Yeah, people like, think.
Yeah, there's a stigma to it. It is like, there is a big individual and couples. It's like, if you're going to couples therapy, then your relationship's a shit show, and you guys have so many issues, and poor you, right?
Or if you go by yourself, you're crazy.
You go by yourself, like, what's wrong with you? Instead of, I go and I'm trying to be aware and grow in who I am and figure out my blind spots and grow in me as a person. It's nothing bad. But I have clients that come in and they just, mild anxiety, mild depression, or they're just like, hey, I got some shit I just want to figure out who I am. Okay, that's healthy. Couples, the same thing. You'll have couples come in and it's like, my first question is, why are you here? Because usually when people walk in a session, couples or individual, is it you hit rock bottom? Like, what was like the point where you're like, I have to go figure some shit out. Mm-hmm. And usually the couples will say, like, we just keep either getting in the same fight, or, well, I'm going to get a divorce. But I always say this, I'm assuming when you walk into my room, and if you're both coming in, you really want to make this work. Whether you want to be there or not, it's like, fuck. Like, I don't really want to go to therapy with my wife, but obviously you don't want to lose her because she showed up. And I always believe if somebody showed up, there's a why. Right. They might not even realize, oh yeah, I'm just coming because she's making me. But you showed up.
Yeah, you could have still not go.
Yeah, she didn't put a gun to your head.
Of course.
Go.
Unless
she did.
We're so happy together.
But
right,
right. Yeah, but people have to look at each, like, yourself and that, But there is definitely a stigma, and I do see people come in and they're, especially men, because of course men are like, oh, therapy.
I don't need this shit.
I don't need this.
I ain't weak.
Or I'm gonna get in here and I'm gonna get blamed for everything, and my job is to keep people out of the blame game. It's like,
if you're gonna go in with that mindset, then maybe there is some blame that you have to accept.
But if you go in there and the whole session, I'm like, yeah, I'm here so he can fix his shit. then he's gonna sit there the whole time like, here we go.
Yeah. No,
I'm the bad one. I'm the problem.
Of course.
Instead of like, this is what I'm gonna take you to emotions. This is what I feel, and we're gonna work through that. And it's like we don't play the blame game because it's easy for you to say, oh, I don't have boundaries. Me and my boyfriend have argued about this one before. Sorry. Definitely. Okay. I don't care about your boundaries because you don't care about mine. And I'm like, is this gonna get us anywhere?
Right. Yeah.
Like, so now it's just like, I do this. 2 wrongs don't make a right.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, oh, since you don't have boundaries, I don't care to have boundaries. So let's go into a therapy session and talk about, well, he doesn't have boundaries, so why are we talking about my boundaries?
Yeah.
Instead of, okay, let's start with one. Let's start with mine, and let me actually look at it. Like, why am I not setting these? And then we'll go to his later, but it's a hard dynamic.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I've gone couples therapy, I've gone individual therapy, and it's been great.
Good for you.
Yeah.
That's so exciting.
I know it is.
I'm
It's awesome.
here for it.
So I had a coworker, and he was asking me like, hey man, like I'm going to troubles with my girlfriend. Like, do you recommend therapy? Like couples therapy? And I'm like, yeah, like you should go. Like you love this person, you've been with them for 5 years. Like try it out. And it actually helped them. So
Yeah.
I'm happy for them. But that's kind of why I wanted to ask you, because a lot of
Yeah.
people think, man, couples therapy is like the last. That's it. Like it's already like done, and I don't know if I want to
that.
go. And yeah, exactly. I don't believe that either.
I feel like it connects people more. It's like after a few sessions, I'll see couples like, wow, there's stuff we don't even know about each other. I've been married for this guy for 10 years and I didn't know this. It's like, I feel like I don't know who you are.
Right.
It's a shame because it has like that stigma that,
Right.
because of that, like, oh, if you're there, it's because you have problems or it is a death sentence.
Yeah.
And because of that, no one is open. Like if you're
Yeah.
open to just learn about you and maybe learn
course.
about your partner and be open,
Things
to
would be a lot
things,
better, probably.
yeah, you're gonna that openness is gonna allow the relation to flourish or
sure.
yourself to develop.
Right.
It's just a shame.
Yeah,
It does have that
it's,
stigma.
yeah, unfortunately.
Well, that's why we do what we do. Because we want to have
For
open
sure.
conversations so people
Hard
can,
conversations are meant to be had.
what is it? Direct but kind.
Direct but kind.
Alrighty. So
Well,
it is time to break up. Sorry,
Break
girl.
up.
But before we do, we
You hurt my feelings though.
get over it. That's you know me.
Yeah, of course. Get
beautiful
over
problem.
it.
We always end it with the guest. You can say it to us or say it to the camera. It's
Okay.
pretty much our final thoughts, and you can sell yourself a little bit, talk about what you do and where they can find you as well. So again, us, the camera, floor is yours. Final thoughts, and where can they find you?
Well, thank you guys for having me. This was great. I appreciate people who can have hard conversations. I hope all of you have hard conversations because they're meant to be had. Be vulnerable, be open. But this was great. You guys are awesome. Keep doing what you guys are doing because people need to hear more of this. So this is great. You guys are awesome.
Love it. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure having you on. For
Yes,
sure.
it was.
Thanks for having me, guys.
So as we finish up, once again, make sure you smash that like button, subscribe wherever the buttons are, ring that notification bell, probably somewhere around here. Comment, share, all that good
share
stuff.
it.
You can find us on social media: Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok.
Make sure you subscribe, follow, and listen to us on iTunes, Spotify, and all that good stuff.
We got our website, coffeebreakup.com, where you can get our brief merch, which we want to elaborate on. We've been talking about it for months, but we don't do anything about it. Little by little, we will.
We'll get to it. But
all right.
That being said,
thank you very much.
thank you for the support, guys. Appreciate
Peace
it.
out.